Din, 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 din. Hello, boils and ghouls. It's your old pal, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And listen, kiddies, you are entering Cinema Chop Shop.
The Cinema Chop Shop.
What's going on, everybody? It's Davey from the 80s, and you are now entering the Cinema Chop Shop, so park your ass right there. While you're there, don't forget to hit the like, the share, and the subscribe button. And today, we are here to review Mr. McMahon, the freaking Netflix documentary starring or following the life of Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Now, growing up, I was a huge fan of WWE. Like, I watched that shit religiously. As it kind of went into like the ruthless aggression era, I kind of started to back out, and I haven't really watched it again since. But this documentary had me enticed because we know about the scandal that's been following Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has been accused of sexually harassing people, basically R-wording somebody, and he has in kind of like a long track history of this stuff. And as you're watching, or as you watch the preview to this documentary, you're thinking like, okay, well, they're about to just like bust this case wide open and just go all the way in. But sadly, as you watch this documentary, you figure out that it kind of tells you things that you already know. There's nothing really that you get introduced to or that gets talked about that isn't already kind of like public knowledge. And honestly, I have not seen Vince McMahon since the early 2000s, and dude looks like he's struggling. Like, he looks like a Timu version of Vincent Price. He looks horrible. Like, he has these black eyebrows that are doing this, and he talks like this, and it looks like he can't move his mouth. Like, this dude is in horrible shape. Like, whatever plastic surgeon this dude paid, immediate lawsuit, because that shit looks crazy. Anyway, so as I thought like this documentary was kind of going to go into like the scandal and go into the dark side of Vince McMahon and shit. And as you're watching this documentary, you find out like, you know what, like this in the back of my mind, I already kind of had a thing. I was like, okay, Netflix just cut a deal with WWE. And I know that since they just cut this deal with WWE, they're not going to super badmouth him. And I think they're going to try to present him as a human being, which I feel like they kind of did, right? Like, this documentary was filmed, majority of it was filmed before the accusations even happened. And then that caused this to go on like a huge hiatus. But the scandal doesn't really get talked about until the last episode. And it gets kind of rushed through really quickly, to the point where you kind of feel like, damn, like y'all really just did everybody disservice by not really going into this. And also the people that are represented in this documentary, like, I feel like they didn't get an assortment of people. Like, yeah, you got I think his name is Tony Atlas, who's funny as shit, by the way. Dude talks about freaking Pat Patterson, and dude tried to tell him I'm Pekka. That's what he says. And it's funny as shit, but then also when you realize like he's being dead ass serious, like that he's serious that Pat Patterson was doing this, you're like, dang, that's kind of sad. It's pretty depressing. And yeah, like the thing is that this really feels like a documentary about WWE. Like, you're watching about how it was created all the way up until now, like where it's at. And along the way they talk about Vince McMahon. Now there are some discussions that happen that make you feel like, damn, like, you know, Vince McMahon is a weird mofo. Like, there's one scene in this documentary where he's like, oh yeah, so I got like two brains going on at the same time, and as I'm talking to you, yeah, there's something else going on in my other head. Well, and then they go like, well, what's the other brain thinking? Oh, it's thinking about sex. And I'm like, this dude is like 89 years old, dude, talking like that. It sounds crazy coming from this old deprived man. And when you listen to Vince McMahon talk and he tries to justify the stuff that he did in the show, he's like, yeah, that was just a character. And you can tell that he had his whole family buy into this whole thing. Like, there's a separation. I'm me, that's a character. And as you're watching this shit, you realize, like, it's Vince McMahon is basically playing himself and just basically making it seem like that character is a whole different person, but in reality, that's truly who Vince McMahon is. And you hear about hypothetical storylines that he came up with Stephanie McMahon about being impregnating her, and this is when she's really pregnant with Hunter's first kid, and this is the idea that he pitches to her. It sounds crazy, you know what I'm saying? But again, Vince McMahon understands the business. He understands what people, well, what certain his audience wants to see, and because of that, he has this huge ass ego to the point where he is not going to step down. And the only way that he would step down, which is actually discussed in this damn shit, is like, he's basically like, one of you guys are going to have to kill me. Like, in order for me to step down, in order for you to get something done that I don't agree with, you're virtually going to have to kill me. And let's not even get too deep into the conversations that he had about like CTE, where he's like, yeah, this shit's like full baloney, da da da, whatever. And he's like, oh, if you provide me with this, then, you know, like I'll think about it, you know? And he kind of discredits it, but then at the same time, the WWE passes like a protocol or a policy that says that people can't take chair shots to the head, right? And you're thinking like, well, if you don't believe in CTE and you think it's baloney, then what's the whole purpose of you not letting people take chair shots to the head? Like, you know, if you don't believe in it. And he is so freaking delusional, it's crazy. Undertaker talks about how he got concussed when he lost the streak to Brock Lesnar, right? And Undertaker was clearly concussed. Like, you saw like the suplex, and they're showing clips of Undertaker. He's just like all over the place. He's woozy. And mind you, Vince McMahon rode with the Undertaker to the hospital after this situation went down. And Vince McMahon's like, yeah, I think Undertaker's like, yeah, I don't remember most of that match because like I got blindsided. Like, I was out of it. Like, I was in a daze. And Vince is like, yeah, I think he just doesn't want to remember it because like it hurt his feelings because he had to lose the streak. Like, you know, I feel like he's basically like kind of insinuating that it's like a repressed memory. It's crazy, you know? And you just got to hear the shit that Vince McMahon says. Like, dude is full of himself, and he comes off really, really horrible. Even though we already know how he is, it just comes off really, really bad. Especially when they start digging up those old interviews that he had with people, and they're questioning him about stuff, and he gets really mad, and he's like trying to punk them. And it's just, dude, it's just, you gotta watch it, all right? I feel like you should watch. If you're a fan of WWE, you should watch it just because it's like entertaining. I think it's a well put together documentary, but at the same time, if you're very vexed in like Vince McMahon's history, and you're very vexed in like the scandals and shit that are associated with it, you're not gonna learn anything new. Like, I didn't really learn anything new watching this documentary. Most of the stuff that I saw in this documentary I already knew, but I appreciated it, and it was really well put together. And I just wish they would have had more of an assortment of people that would have had different opinions. Like, you had Tony Atlas, cool, and he had a different opinion, and then also you had Brett, who has his opinion. But then most of the other wrestlers that they choose to focus on, like Stone Cold, you got Hulk Hogan, you got Taker. Most of those people have a specific. They're very loyal to the soil. Like, Vince made them a star, and they're not gonna badmouth Vince. They're not gonna shit on bite the hands that feed them type thing, because those people are on legacy contracts, so they're still getting paid to this day. They're not gonna shit on it, you know. Booker T. I thought Booker T was gonna do a little bit more than what he did, but it is what it is. I really feel like that maybe they should have went and they should have tried to interview more of the people that had that were more involved in the scandals. Like I know Sable for sure, she sued, and then Vince kind of like rubbed in the face like, well, shit, like if she came back, then obviously nothing bad really happened, right? Because she came back to work for us, right? And I'm like, damn, dude, that's a cold ass way. That's a cold narrative to spin. But it does make it look kind of weird, like, you know, like you just kind of did it for the money. Because honestly, if somebody insulted you and somebody kind of like they kind of like tarnished your integrity, you know, and they disrespected you, I wouldn't come fucking work for that person again. You just said this person sexually harassed you and they tried to make you vulnerable and stuff, and you're gonna come back and work for them like that. To me, that just doesn't sound right. I mean, I'm pretty sure Vince threw a bag at her, but no bag in the world unless you're struggling is worth that. But anyway, like I said, it's a fun watch. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining, but at the same, and then also I gotta say it also, Shane. This I was never a freaking fan of Shane, like at all. Like I've always thought, like, damn, this fool's forcing his kids to be in the business, whatever. You know, like it's kind of cringe. And to find out that Shane basically did all that stuff just to appease his father, just to be like his father, because he wanted to be a part of what his dad was doing. He wanted to show his dad that he's like worth it. I thought that was kind of crazy, and to kind of like conclude it with that scene of like him after that WrestleMania against Taker, and he hugs his dad and he's like crying and stuff, and basically telling his dad like that's all I wanted, you know, and Vince having like a little emotional moment. Like it's kind of like heart wrenching to see, like, damn, dude, Shane really just wanted to be like his pops. And another thing, you could tell Shane felt some type of way because he wanted that company for himself, you know. And Vince was like, I'm not just gonna give it to you, especially if I'm freaking alive. Like over my dead body, I'm gonna give you this shit. And it sucks because you could tell that Shane really wanted to try to take that company and do something with it. So it was cool to see that Shane walked away from the situation and made something for himself. I know that at one point he wanted UFC. Obviously Vince didn't want to like shell out the money for it, so Shane kind of had to just like suck it up, and eventually UFC became one of the biggest things that's happening right now. And when you pay attention to UFC, especially with the promotional fighting things and the kind of like the where they kind of sitting there kind of talking to each other, you'll notice that it's a lot of flair. Like there's a lot, it feels very WWE-ish how they're cutting promos, essentially talking crap to each other. But again, I thought it was really entertaining. I thought I was entertained by it, but at the same time, if you know a lot about WWE history, you're not going to learn anything new watching this. It isn't as advertised where it's like a tell-all type, thing. It's not. It's really just same old shit that we already know. It feels like a very once-over, glaze-over type thing, over shit that we already know. But anyway, that's all I got. Let me know if you agree or disagree, whatever the case may be. Drop it in the comment section down below. And if you are watching this, make sure to hit the subscribe button on the way out. Until next time, you are now exiting the Cinema Chop Shop. Hope you guys are having a great day, and adios.
I want to play a game. Subscribe now. The choice is yours. You're now exiting the Cinema Chop Shop.